Hi, my name is Kemi Tokonlowo, and I'm just going to be sharing some of my thoughts with you. One thing I have been contemplating lately is the sovereignty of God. Sometimes some things happen to us that makes no sense, absolutely no sense. And if we're not careful, we interpret them through the lens of pain, rejection, betrayal, disappointment. And that's exactly what the enemy wants, for us to interpret things through pain, rejection, and what that would do is just leave imprints on our souls. I remember a season when I was rejected from something I desperately wanted. This thing wounded me so bad. I felt so bad. I cried. But because of that rejection, I had to make a move. I had to move to another city, another state, and this was during COVID. And what had happened was that it was later on that I realized that move positioned me exactly where I needed to be. Because it was when I moved to the next state that I was diagnosed with cancer. And literally, the hospital that I used was 5 minutes away from me. Everything I needed for survival and for treatment was already prepared for me. It was right beside me, and I didn't know. So what looked like rejection was actually God repositioning me and realigning me to where I needed to be, the sovereignty of God. Because when I had looked back, the former city that I was in was a really big city. It was a city that they had 2 years wait lists for healthcare. So you can imagine what God that saw tomorrow had already realigned me. So whenever life happens, one thing I try to think first is the sovereignty of God. And I was thinking about Joseph as well. Joseph was in alignment. He had favor. His father gave him the coat of many colors. He was obedient because his father had sent him to meet his brothers, and then he went. He was in alignment, but alignment later looked like being sold, looked like being betrayed, looked like being falsely accused. Like all of these negative things started to happen. But Joseph was in alignment, and at the end of the day, of course, prophecy was still fulfilled. But what struck me was that at the end of the story, in Genesis 45, verse 4, Joseph said, "Come closer to me." Joseph said to his brothers. They came closer. "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. But don't feel badly. Don't blame yourselves for selling me. God was behind it. God sent me here ahead of you to save lives." So you can imagine that Joseph saw what he went through the perspective of the sovereignty of God. He saw that God was behind it. And of course, that's why he did not tilt into bitterness and offense. He was wounded quite all right, but he saw that God was behind it. And that changed everything. And it does change everything. So because sometimes it may look like, what looks like rejection may actually be divine positioning. What looks like a bad thing that you're not expecting, it can actually be the hand of God. So because a lot of times the more we see God's hand in the process, the less we are going to tilt into bitterness, into offense, into despair, which is what the enemy wants. So what if going forward, when things happen, maybe that painful thing is not rejection, maybe it's not even abandonment, maybe God is actually behind it. So going forward, I just want to challenge you, when something happens, something that might make no sense, why don't you just think about the sovereignty of God? And of course, the first thing that we should do is to give God thanks, because if you believe that this is the hand of God, then we'll give God thanks. I heard a pastor say something. He said that when my plans are failing, God's counsel is standing, and that is surrender. So I just want to encourage us to think sovereignty, to always, no matter how negative it looks, just think sovereignty. And as long as you're in alignment, you will definitely see the sovereignty of God. So that situation that you're going through, think sovereignty.